completely neglecting him on offense. He might as well be invisible. He's not touching the ball. They have this extremely skilled young player who they should boost in confidence, who they're just not using at all. And you're seeing that boil into frustration.
But really quick, before I begin, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It seriously makes a huge difference in my videos. That way, YouTube knows to recommend this video to a brand new audience who can also smash the like button. So thank you so much for doing that, and let's begin.
Ben, at the end of the win against Houston Monday night, we saw something fairly strange. A really, really weird sequence. It seemed to start with Deni Avdija when he was calling for the ball from Rui Hachimura with about 4 seconds left in the game. Rui should not have thrown the ball. They were literally about to win the game, just dribbling, shaking hands with the other players. But he threw the ball, shouldn't have, whatever he did. It ended up being a turnover. Right after that, as Houston's inbounding the ball, Deni committed a foul with 1.3 seconds left, and that led to free throws for Houston. And a really prolonged, strange ending. Ben, you and I talked about it, and Deni looked really frustrated there at the end of a pretty solid win against Houston. So, and we saw Bradley Beal and Scott Brooks also, yelling at him from the sideline, pretty much. He's a rookie on this team. He messed up right at the end of that game. So, his head coach and the main veteran, the superstars, they were giving it to him. So I guess from all this, do you gather anything from this? Does this mean anything for Deni moving ahead? I mean, what did you gather from this?
Yeah, I mean, we're not mind readers. I'm no expert in reading, body language or anything like that. But you can look at the numbers. Let's look at the past 5 games. Game against Chicago, 4 points. Game against Toronto, 9 points. Knicks, 8 points. Boston, 8 points. Houston, 5 points. So I'm going to ask you this, Anthony. Is he better than that? Is Deni Avdija better than 4 points, 9 points? 8?
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. There's no question about it that Deni Avdija is better than what he's shown. Look, a couple weeks ago, they played against the Miami Heat. Bradley Beal was out. Deni Avdija scores 20 points, his career high. He was actually shooting the ball. He took 15 shots. Now he's shooting 5-6 shots a game. He's averaging 5 shots a game. So his frustration is absolutely warranted. This team has been struggling. There's layers to the struggle. Thomas Bryant's injury, the COVID stuff, the lack of depth, the bad free agent signings, the poor coaching rotations, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that goes unmentioned often is the fact that this team has neglected Deni Avdija. He's come into the NBA as a 19-year-old kid. He's 20 years old now. He's incredibly skilled for a player his size, 6'9". He can play point guard. Really good passer for his size. Can obviously shoot the ball. He's shooting 36% from 3 this year. And just kind of completely neglecting him on offense. He might as well be invisible. Unless he's wide open from 3, he's not touching the ball. He's not initiating any sort of offense. He's kind of just there. They have this extremely skilled young player who they should boost in confidence, who they're just not using at all. And you're seeing that boil into frustration late in games where he's fouling for no reason. They're up by 20. Bradley Beal's yelling at him. Scott Brooks is yelling at him. I don't want to extrapolate too much from that, but the fact of the matter is, I mean, he's averaging 7 points per game. Deni Avdija is a much better player than 7 points per game. He's much better than what he's shown, and I think this is really it's sad. I think it's negligent on the team's part the way they've handled them, and I think they need to do a better job because players' confidence is really fragile at 20 years old. We've seen the Wizards do this to other players in the past, ruin their confidence, and ultimately ruin their careers. Deni Avdija is way too skilled for that to happen. They cannot allow that to happen, and shame on them if it does happen, because other teams would not be utilizing Deni Avdija like this. I mean, I often talk about the Spurs, and maybe that's an unfair comparison, but even look at like mediocre teams, right, that have shown some competence. I mean, obviously the Jazz aren't mediocre this year, but they've built a reputation of knowing how to get the most out of their players throughout these years. Deni Avdija, I mean, you put him in Utah, you think he's putting up 7 points per game? There's no shot. He's putting up in the double digits. They're utilizing him in the offense, taking pressure off Donovan Mitchell, allowing him to initiate offense. But instead, the Wizards have a player in Bradley Beal whose usage rate is first in the NBA. Have never even tried to have any semblance of organized offense. It's just been Bradley Beal ad nauseum, and Deni Avdija's left out, as he's always been this year. They need to figure it out. We're approaching All-Star break, and Anthony, I'm a little concerned because They need to figure this out soon. Otherwise, his confidence is going to take a serious hit.
And I agree 100% with you. We were both so shocked when we got the news that he was being benched for the first time. Scott and really everyone within the organization from the beginning of training camp has raved about Deni, about how much he's worked his tail off, how much he has earned his spot. Like you said, as a 19-year-old kid coming in, hungry, ready to work. Like they said, he holds himself to a different standard every time he gets on the floor, and he's super skilled. He's everything. I mean, this was a great pick by the Wizards, and for his starting spot just to disappear without really Scott having to answer for it, give us a viable answer. He just kind of plugged Davis into the rotation, right? And then Davis has been coming out of the rotation. He's been coming off the bench too. So we're not. It was very strange to see all that unfold, and it's continuing. Now it is just continued with Deni. He's continuing his bench role, and we don't have an answer for this. I don't know if Deni was given an answer for this, but nothing in what I saw throughout any of these games, Deni changed dramatically. His play out there, I mean, really how interested he seems. He has seemed the same since day one. I don't know how you feel about that, but for me watching, every time he's out there, he plays the same. He's a super skilled, player. He can. I agree with you 100%. Scott does not want him to play point guard. I definitely think he could play some point guard, but he just has everything that you really want in a young playmaking, kind of guard, small forward that he is. And Ben, we might be questioning the player development for the Washington Wizards right now. I mean, I don't know if we might have to tap the brakes with an instant like this. I don't really want to go all the way questioning their player development, but this is eyebrow raising. I
mean, if you don't want to question it, I'll question it. I mean, they spent what 2-3 years developing Troy Brown, and now he's the towel boy. Now he's collecting towels from the other players on the bench.
Right?
Why'd you pick him 15th overall?
100%.
You're a team that's 8-17. Paid Davis Bertans $80 million, so you can justify starting him just by salary alone. You bench him, and now you're starting Garrison Matthews over your 9th pick. What does Garrison Matthews do better than Deni Avdija?
Right.
I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. And it just speaks to this coaching staff's lack of creativity. You say, he should be playing some point guard. Of course he should, because that's how you're going to utilize his talents. That's what's going to differentiate you between other teams. How many teams have 6'9", 6'10" players that can handle the ball as well as Deni Avdija? Not very many. Yet, what do they use him as? A standstill shooter?
Scott is completely out on that idea. Every time it's been brought up in any post-game interview, any pre-game interview, he has shut that down so quickly. No, he's not a point guard. No, he cannot play. He can't understand it yet. He needs a lot of time. These are the types of answers that he gives us. And it just doesn't really make sense because you're playing around with the rotations this much. Why don't you play around with that?
Well, Anthony, here's why. Because this team is 8-17 and they're coached by Scott Brooks. And it's really that simple. Put Quinn Snyder on this team. Put any coach who's earned their stripes in the league lately. Don't you think that they'd be using Deni Avdija a little bit differently? Because it's not rocket science. It's really not. I mean, Deni Avdija is a 6'9", 6'10" point forward. He knows how to handle the ball. He can initiate offense. And the Wizards' offense is dull. They score the ball a lot because Bradley Beal is an elite scorer. But his usage rate is the highest in the league, and that's why they score so many points. But when you look at this team's offense, there's no creativity there. You never run a set that makes your jaw drop. It's just Bradley Beal offense, handoff, pick and roll. That's all they run. And some of that is because the roster's bad. But a lot of that is because they're not utilizing the players that they should be in the ways that they should be utilized. Deni Avdija is a perfect example of that. And it pains me because, again, young players have fragile confidences. And Deni Avdija isn't that sort of player to sit back on his hands and wait. Deni Avdija is a fiery kid. He wants to contribute because he knows he can. And now he's seeing guys like Garrison Matthews get ahead of him. Davis Bertans, even at times like Jerome Robinson has played ahead of him. So You got to figure
Denny's
that out.
earned that, and Deni is 100% earned those minutes. And Ben, my beef with Scott in this particular situation is just you're telling the world that this kid earned this spot. He earned it, and when we all know what it's like to be a part of a team, and obviously a part of every team, you have that sort of camaraderie and you have a sort of understanding. Like you give someone their word, and Scott gave Deni his word. Like you worked your butt off for this. You get the starting spot, and he did for what? 14 games, 15, like however many games, and then was yanked with no sort of answer, no sort of. There was nothing behind it. It was just plugging in Davis Bertans while Davis was not 100% conditioned at all, while he was still shagging. I mean, it just made no sense. And Ben, you're right. This is scary. You don't want a kid like this to be disgruntled. Especially your 9th overall pick.
To me, if you're the guy making these picks, and I mean Tommy Shepard, and you're watching this go down, it's like, how does this not rub you the wrong way? I mean, you're investing a lot in these young players. They're spending picks year after year on players who ultimately go underutilized. And we talk about Troy Brown almost every episode, but he's literally sitting. He's the 15th player on the roster at this point. That is ridiculous. And if you told me last year that this would happen to Troy Brown, I would never believe it. So that's why there's a slippery slope here. We're 20 games or whatever, 25 games into the season. If you tell me Deni Avdija is not going to be the 15th player next year, I'd say, of course he's not. But it's not out of the realm of possibility with how this team has been operating, because they take these really skilled young players, they don't develop them, and before you know it, their career is in shambles, and they're just trying to claw their way off the 15th, off that bench. It's ridiculous. I mean, they have to figure it out. And I don't know about you, Anthony. I do not trust this team to figure it out, because it's year after year they do this. And Scott Brooks, like you said, has shown zero sense in changing his ways. I mean, the slightest changes have been ones that we've been begging for weeks. I mean, he started Mo Wagner. Like, duh. What are you going to start, Robin Lopez? You should have been started Mo Wagner long ago. Literally. What are you going to play, Garrison Matthews? I mean, Scott Brooks told me, hey, almost. I mean, honestly, kind of rubbed me the wrong way, where he was like, come on, man, wait on. Like, be patient. Be patient for what? Jerome Robinson to fall out of the lineup? Like, Garrison Matthews should have been playing this entire season. And now he's finally playing? Like, duh. These are obvious moves that Scott Brooks, it takes him weeks to figure it out. And that's why this team is 8-17, man.
Ben, I agree with you 100%, man. It's just, I have no faith in them turning around this season with what we've seen so far. Like, just the inconsistency, and and as little as that sequence may have been with Deni, it still is frustrating for fans, for everyone that has been paying attention like us, because Deni did not do anything to lose his spot.
Right.
He lost it. And as a young kid, like you said, it's very easy to lose your confidence. I really hope the vets on, in that locker room are boosting him up, lifting him up, because, DC, they got a special one in him at number 9. So.